Welcome again to the media convention. So the next session is about maybe something funny. The title is LOL, Laugh Out Loud. But the session is more about satire in a landscape where there is political restrictions. Political context for satire is always a little bit serious. And so we have a panel with 4 people sharing their personal experiences about satire in Africa. So let me introduce you, Siyanda, Gado, Layla and Fatso. Welcome on stage to the media convention.
Sure. Apparently my glass is here. So.
Okay, welcome. Welcome to all of you. Thanks for coming to this session. Welcome on behalf of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, and thanks to... Can you hear me now? No? Can you hear me now? That sounds much better. Hello again, thanks for coming to this session. Welcome on behalf of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, and I'd like to thank our speakers who came all the way down to be here with us tonight. They made very long journeys. I'm really excited to introduce to you some of the most prominent satirists from the African continent. Gado on my right. He's based in Kenya. His XYZ show on TV has an audience of 10 million viewers. He's been called Africa's most prominent cartoonist, which also earned him quite some powerful enemies. The East African newspaper was completely stopped because of cartoon that criticized the former Tanzanian president. And recently, Gado got fired from the Nation newspaper in Kenya, which he has worked for a very long time. Siyanda Mohutsiwa, on my right, is a mathematics student from Botswana. In around 2011, she started tweeting when Twitter became popular, and then she started the hashtag If Africa Was a Bar. The hashtag went viral, and since then, Siyanda has become a satirist, and she has become known as a writer, and she has a very popular internet presence across Africa. Farai Monroe, on my left, also known as Comrade Fatso, is a popular spoken word artist, comedian and hip-hop singer from Zimbabwe. Together with artist Tongai Makawa, he created the satirical news show Sambesi News. A third artist, Michael Kudakwashe, is now running the show with them, and I'm mentioning all of them because all 3 are here with us. It's just Farai on the stage because he's wearing the best shirt, I heard. So if there are 2 people disrupting the session from the audience, you also know who they are.
They're just jealous.
We're now going to show you a clip with some samples of their work. It's going to take around 15 minutes. Please bear with us if you can't understand everything. The sound here is quite ambient, and there are also some local dialects, so bear with us. We're going to start the debate after the clip. It's just going to give you a glimpse into their work.
Presents. The way things are even going, I'm not sure who is the president anymore. Because if I say one thing and he says the opposite, Nigerians will most likely follow what he says because they fear him more than they fear me. Which kind of wahala be this? If something now happens to me now, Nigerians will not even care. They don't like me. They might even end up thanking Shekau for it. What is your problem, this man? How can you appear like that? Do you want to kill me? You want my heart to explode out of fear? How can you appear just like that? Why can't you be gentlemanly for once in your life?
Why do you Ogas as the top fear so much for your lives? Is it that you have not eaten enough already? I need you not to be afraid of death. Really? Because you have tested the best of both worlds.
Listen, my friend. You are not the right person to tell me that crap. Do you think everybody is suicidal like you?
Huh?
All animals are not equal, Mr. Man.
Nigga,
Some foolish ones are willing to die to meet virgins, according to what you people believe. And some are so sharp that they get all their virgins here before death comes. So just understand. Don't tell me nonsense.
This is not good. No. Stop the sarcasm.
Or else
Look,
what?
I know we have kidnapped guests, but now if you make me angry, we will kidnap even boys.
Huh?
5,000 of them. We'll sell them to slave trade into Sudan, Senegal, even Mecca too.
Okay.
Look, because I like to meet you, don't mean you can talk to me anyhow, wallahi.
Understandable, sir.
I don't give empty threats.
I know.
I can unleash the dragon right now, wallahi tallahi.
Okay. I apologize, Mr. Terrorist. But can we come to terms on the Chibok girls?
No. Baramu magana number. We have kidnapped them. In fact, we have sold them all.
Okay.
The ones that are left is for me and my friends to be visiting in the night.
Okay. In as much as we don't want you to do any such things to those girls, how can we be sure you are speaking the truth? How are we sure you have not turned all of them into sex slaves?
La. Do you call me a liar?
No.
You see the problem, Jonah. You are always wasting time and money on irrelevancies.
Okay, fine then. Let's go straight to relevant things.
I got no apologies to make. That's why I shot your head, you cave-dwelling fool. U.S. Al-Qaeda killers. You know who the realest is? Navy SEALs, we bring it. Haha, that's right. First off, shot your head in your living room. U.S. when we ride, come equipped with game. You claim to be a pro, but I shot your head. We bust Al-Qaeda niggas dead for life. Plus Osama trying to see me weak, hearts are ripped. Al-Zawahiri and Osama some mark ass. We keep on coming while we're running for your oil, steady gunning, keep on busting on the fools. You know the rules. Gaddafi, go ask Osama how I'll leave you, cut your old ass. Now see you in pieces, now be deceased. Al-Qaeda don't play around with real G's, quick to snatch bombs off your jackets. Forget peace. I'll let them niggas know it's on for life. Don't let the U.S. Navy ride them camels. Haha. Al-Qaeda murdered on wax and killed. Play with me and get your caps peeled. You know, see. Grab your pants when you see Obama. Call your camels when you see Obama. You bombed the U.S. but your punks didn't finish. Now you about to feel the wrath of a menace. Nigga, hit 'em up. Check this out. You Al-Qaeda know what time it is? I don't even know why I'm on this track. You all niggas ain't even on my level. I'm gonna let my little homie Ram B ride on you.
Get out the way, yo. Get out the way, yo.
Yeah.
Bin Laden just got popped, hiding in a big-ass mansion. And let us shoot him in his head. Al-Qaeda needs to get spanked. Crash for setting bombs, little accident murderers. And I ain't never heard of ya. Poiseless gats attack when I'm serving you. Spank to shank your whole crew when I gank. Guard your cave, cause I'ma slam your ass in the pan. Osama weaker than a doll I'm running through, nigga. And I'm smoking Al-Qaeda in front of you, nigga. With the ready power, protecting my guests like Jack Bauer. Osama must be sour cause the package made his last hour. USA, hit him up,
Obama. Call your camels when you see Obama. You bombed the U.S. but your punks didn't finish. Now you about to feel the wrath of a menace. Come on in, hit him up.
It began with one question. If Africa was a bar, what would your country be drinking or doing? I kicked it off with a guess about South Africa, which wasn't exactly according to the rules because South Africa is not my country, but alluding to the country's continual attempts to build a post-racial society after being ravaged by decades by apartheid, I tweeted, if Africa was a bar, South Africa would be drinking all kinds of alcohol and begging them to get along in its stomach. And then I waited. Then I had that funny feeling where I wondered if I crossed the line, so I sent out a few other tweets about my own country and a few other African countries I'm familiar with. And then I waited again, but this time I read through almost every tweet I had ever tweeted to convince myself No, to remind myself that I'm really funny and that if nobody gets it, that's fine. But luckily, I didn't have to do that for very long. Very soon, people were participating. In fact, by the end of that week in July, the hashtag If Africa Was a Bar would have garnered around 60,000 tweets, lit up the continent, and made its way to publications all over the world. People were using the hashtag to do many different things. To poke fun at their stereotypes, to criticize government spending, to make light of geopolitical tensions, to remind us that even in Africa, there's some countries we don't know exist, and also to make fun of the countries that don't think that they're in Africa. And to note the countries that had made a big turnaround. But most importantly, people were using the hashtag to connect. People were connecting over their Africanness. So for 1 week in July, Twitter became a real African bar.
Welcome to Zambezi News, where we bring you the news faster than it takes to get rid of 2 bungling imposters.
We bring you the news as factual and indomitable as 2 veteran newscasters who aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
We bring you the news reliable, like an authoritarian yet loving and fatherly ruler.
Irreplaceable, irrevocable, undisputable, unperturbable.
We put the swag in news wagon.
Impeccable, ungrateful, impetuous, infectious.
The facts straight to your desk, like the early boy who gets to his school desk early before the other kids get there later after him.
Indivisible, indestructible, immovable, inoculation, innocent, bystander, bilateral, bilingual, bilocal, by decree, for us, by us, FUBU, or 5.
We bring you the news.
Cut! Cut! Cut!
Somewhere in the heart of the Midwest.
I've got to save Africa.
You're so selfless, honey.
A dream must be fulfilled, a risk taken. Famine Pictures presents a heartwarming tale of bravery and sacrifice. He killed thousands, single-handedly. He saved the entire continent, and they didn't even know from what. In fact, they hadn't even asked for his help. The entire cast died around him. But he survived. One man, alone, in Africa. One man, one quest, thousands of powerless extras, and 11 years in the making. White Night rising in a dark continent. Coming soon to a theater near you.
Now, welcome to my impending bumper paprika field.
I see.
We planted the seeds last year by night, based on a vision I had had the night before. No fruits yet, but don't count your chickens before they hatch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this This is my impending bumper maize harvest. We have not yet decided where we are going to plant it, or even if we will. But between you and me, my peasant neighbor, Trison Lackmore, has a swath of bumper maize harvest fields, which I intend to annex next season. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's how we roll, eh?
Yeah, you roll like that.
And I will reap the benefits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me. You are honored.
Thank you for having us, Minister.
Yeah. Right. You will go and see Laxon and make him an offer he can't refuse.
Okay.
Are you a high-powered ruler? Do you often get stains from pesky journalists? Do you get marks from dirty opposition parties? Do you find foreign governments in your underwear? You need sovereignty. It gets rid of pesky journalists after the first wash and turns dirty opposition parties into clean, obedient junior partners in your government. Foreign meddling in your underwear by homosexual governments will be a thing of the past. Sovereignty. Dirty is good.
EMLSB with our brand new song featuring some guy we don't even like. Said we needed R&B on the chorus. Who we? Sisters with voices?
Help the children, serve the orphans. Oh yeah, yeah. Stop AIDS, stop early child marriages. Donate a blanket, 1 or 2. Circumcision is a must. Every man and woman, not the kids. But remember to wash your hands. Cholera, oh yeah, yeah. Cholera, my yeah, cholera.
I got a young bride, gave her the name Vanilla, cause she smacks for ice cream after dinner. Put food on a plate to give her a full belly, cause I'm Zim's answer to R. Kelly. Baba Shoopy thinks he's so damn clever, cause he can make a crap chorus last forever. He's only on this track cause I owe him cash, cause I borrowed Game of Thrones and broke his flash and smoked his stash, so this is like a token track anyway. I think he tried to fleece me. I don't even know what happened to Khaleesi. The season only went to episode 9 and they didn't kill Joffrey. What a waste of time.
No, guys, man. Who invited him to sing with us? This Help Babies thing is no swagger. Cholera, AIDS, no swagger. I don't even have enough space to sing now. No, forget it. I'm gone. But you still have to pay me for nothing. Huh? And I'm not renewing my contract. Young Krango, out.
Hey, thank you very much. I hope that you at least got parts of it. Since we watched Zambezi News last, let's start with you, Farai. What we saw looks quite lighthearted. It looks funny, it's hilarious, but it's quite serious at the same time. How do you manage to stay out of prison?
By the grace of God, who I don't believe in. How we stay out of prison, I think we hide in plain sight. We're very obvious about what we do. We're not an underground news collective. Everyone knows who we are, where we work from. And I think it's also, the fact that that we've been going since 2011 now. And it just started off by fluke. A friend of ours asked us to read the news at a film festival, and then she sent over a film crew to film us, and it went down a treat when they screened it. So we're like, okay, we're onto something. And we've ended up, I think, building it up into quite a big thing in Zimbabwe. Zambezi News itself is a parody of our state-controlled Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation. They issue out relentless propaganda, and their bungling is just, it's on epic proportions. And so basically, we parody the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation. They provide 50% of our material, really. But because we get that message out, there is blowback from the state and from the regime. Where there's a famous saying in Zimbabwe that you've got freedom of expression, but you don't have freedom after expression, and you never know when they're going to come for you. So yeah, we do run into trouble. We do have situations where some of our main actors have been threatened by state security agents. Michael sitting in the front row there, but that shows that they're watching our show, which is really fantastic.
So you mainly disseminate through the social media, right, and the internet. You also broadcast on TV now, but your main media are actually the social media. So Zimbabwe is known for quite repressive media legislation and also media practice. So how does that extend to the internet, and how can you circumvent it?
Yeah, I mean that's the funny thing with Zambezi News is it's a show made for TV that's not allowed on TV in Zimbabwe. So we have to be creative about how we disseminate it, because all radio and TV in Zimbabwe is either controlled by the state or they're private radio stations run by the Minister of ICTs, you know what I mean? So we have to find creative means of getting it out. Initially, when we started in 2011, we focused a lot on DVDs. So we distributed around 10,000 DVDs across the country to 150 towns, villages, and growth points. But since the growth of the internet in Zimbabwe, you've got rapidly expanding access to mobile broadband internet to an extent where there are more phones than people in Zimbabwe. Over the last few years, we've put a lot of focus on using Facebook and using WhatsApp to get our videos out, because those are the two biggest content and video content sharing platforms in Zimbabwe, funnily enough. YouTube pales in comparison. So yeah, we use WhatsApp and Facebook in order to get our message out. And then recently we've also signed a deal with the biggest cable channel on the African continent to broadcast from South Africa into Zimbabwe, and they show our show across the country.
So the show can be seen in Zimbabwe?
Yes, just not on a Zimbabwean television station.
Okay, and there's nothing the censor can do about it?
No, they can't, because this is a cable channel that goes across the continent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's move to Gado. You got fired from a newspaper that you've been working for years, and you're such a prominent cartoonist. I mean, does the political elite still feel threatened by your cartoons that are so well known all over? What was the reason for your sacking?
Thank you. Before I answer that, I think I must say that over the last 20 years, I mean, Kenya has made tremendous progress in terms of freedom of press, and probably in the region is the leading in terms of press freedom. But it has probably the largest, the nation is the largest news in the region, and around East Africa. But having said that, I mean, the media has always faced pressure in Kenya in the sense that each government, from the Moi regime to the current one, you've had a lot of pressure, that complaining and all that. But what has happened in the last few years with this administration is that the pressure has gone up. And what is interesting is that they have gotten players within the media that are willing to do the bidding for this government. So that has changed the ball game altogether. Whereas in the past there has been pressure, I mean, as way as 2009, I mean, the nation was sued because of the cartoon that I did. But I had no problem with that because I had the backing of the newspaper and all the time that I was supported. So recently what happened, as I mentioned, is that you have the editorial regime of the newspaper that is willing to work with this government, that is a puppet of this government, and that has made it very difficult for critics of the government. And it's not me alone. I think earlier in January there was an editor who was sacked. Years ago, we had also an editor from a different newspaper that was sacked. So we are seeing this back and forth. Rather, we are seeing an effort from the government trying to claw back the gains that the media has made over the years.
So other than Zambezi News, you've been part of the official media somehow. You've been present in the print media, other than you guys who basically try to kind of find your own channels. But you're at the same time a multimedia artist. You're on TV as well, and so on. Do the digital media provide you with an opportunity to actually circumvent that censorship that you're now faced with, or you've been faced with multiple times?
Yeah, so originally I'm an editorial cartoonist, and then I'm also an animator, and so I'm a creator and producer of the XYZ show. I mean, way from the beginning, for me, the social media, what it has done, and to many other African countries, it has become an alternative platform. And so you can always subvert the mainstream media and the official media, the government media. You can go straight to the social media without worrying about censorship. So most of the time, in my case, for example, whenever my drawings are not accepted by editors, I will post them online straight.
So where do you post them?
I post them on my site, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And interestingly, you reach actually more people there. With XYZ, we do the same. We reach more people through YouTube, through Facebook. I mean, XYZ was actually, when we started in 2009, we were aware of that, and we established all social media platforms. And so we actually ended up reaching a lot of people, and our numbers in terms of reaching out are quite supported by the social media platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask Siyanda, what I understood from your TED Talk, and we saw a little part of it now, is that you basically want to connect people. Your work is also about criticizing, but it's mainly about connecting young Africans and kind of instilling in them a curiosity for each other, getting to know each other, etc., also through the hashtag that you created. And when you see all of the TED Talk, then you actually see Siyanda continuing to say that she's interested in creating some kind of social Pan-Africanism, meaning like using the internet and the social media to get people together. How does that work for you, given that Africa is not a country? It's many countries, it's many languages, it's many cultures. It's even different senses of humor, as you say on your own blog. So how do you manage to capture an African audience?
The first thing I think, is this on?
I don't think so.
It's not on?
Try talking again.
The first thing that I think is...
Can we get a mic on?
Yeah, somebody to help.
Say something again.
I think the Botswana regime is trying to silence you.
Seems coincidental.
It is on, actually.
Hello? Yes. Okay. This is... Yeah. So I think definitely there are quite a number of differences between different Africans, even within the same countries. And I think it can be quite difficult if you think of it in this kind of straightforward way of we must all have similarities in order to understand one another. What I enjoy about the internet, and I think what everyone must enjoy about social media, is that we begin to meet each other from a position of deep intimacy. When you go on Twitter, the way that Africans use Twitter all over the continent, there's an openness, a desire to connect, I think, a real deep-rooted, almost cultural push to identify what you are in this world and share it with people. And a lot of the struggles, believe it or not, that we have all around the continent are very similar. The jokes that you saw on this hashtag and other hashtags that I've done, they tend to have a similar vein. So that's why I categorized them by type rather than by country. There were a number of people talking about the government's failings at budgeting and finance, management. Someone from Kenya said if Africa was about Kenya, would be the guy who wakes up without his wallet. It was something that you could see that it was not about the individual nation, the individual flag, the individual cultures or subcultures or tribes of each country, was that we all shared a deep longing for something. And I think with a collaborative thinking with this idea, we can begin to figure it out together and try to get it together. So of course there's problems with language, internet access. Not everybody has the luxury to joke around on a Sunday. But when we do, we gain a quick intimacy of each other, a quick sharing of long-term goals. We both begin to understand what we need to know in order to take Africa to the next level, so to speak.
Mm. And when you say that the internet provides African youth with a platform to develop their own voice, which they had to take violently before, then and you yourself talk about people who don't have access to the internet or can't afford it or whatever. Who do you think hears that voice in the end?
I think what matters, of course, I think everyone in this room has kind of also been disillusioned by this idea that internet activism has some real-time tangible result in the world. I think we've kind of all lost the faith in that a little bit. Although it's not always warranted. In South Africa, there was a movement called Fees Must Fall that started as a Twitter trend, and now they're actually closing down schools to fight ridiculously high tertiary fees. So it does happen once every 5 months or years or whatever that an internet thing becomes a real thing. But in the time when it is not, I think, and I've seen this over the past few years, is that all that matters is that we hear each other. Well, it's not all that matters, but it's very significant. And what happens is we begin to reward our interest in our political landscape by virtue of all these types of ways of sharing ideas online. So before, if you cared about politics and you were some 19-year-old kid in some village in Botswana, it was literally the dumbest thing that you could do with your time, just because it was kind of inconsequential in the grand scheme of things in the African political landscape. But now it's I can like your little tweet about, your ideas about policies that should be implemented in your village, even if your minister of impending projects isn't going to hear it. Even if they're not going to read it and say, oh, I should change my whole life. Other people are going to see it. They're going to engage with you. They're going to foster bigger ideas within you. And the greatest thing I think also about the internet is free information, and you get the opportunity to learn so much from other Africans online. And 3, I think the other way that this is, I was not numbering things, but now I am. And 3, I think the other thing is, in the past 5 years, you will notice that there was a huge shift in a country like South Africa, where when apartheid ended, the media was still largely white-owned and white-run, so you had the voices of the minority controlling the biggest media. And now you have situations where there's a lot more black editors, but the recurring theme you'll see is it's people that tended to have quite a large following online, because these people were engaged with the black South African reality, and now they're in charge of publications that represent the ordinary person in a real and meaningful way. So I think what the internet will do for my generation of Africans is it will foster in those of us who become leaders a respect for collaboration, a respect for the ordinary other African, because we've shared these intimate spaces. We've begun to learn from each other, and we've become inspired and rewarded by one another. So even if the 5 people who are on the internet don't all change the world, there's going to be 1 or 2 people who take forward this idea of a social Pan-Africanism into a collaborative future.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot, by the way, of the Arab Spring, where people through the social media actually felt that they got to know each other for the very first time. But Farai, I would like to kind of drill a little bit more into this question of access to the internet. I mean, in Africa, the percentages of people who have access to the internet are so much lower than in the rest of the world. You want to reach the whole country, and you want to especially reach those who don't have, who are in the rural areas and who usually don't have the possibilities to actually question the official propaganda and find alternative information. So how do you manage to reach out to those audiences? And what do you do also in terms of offline activism? I know that you're an activist on both levels, online and offline. How do you combine the two in order to reach the people of Zimbabwe?
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely a big question in terms of are we also reaching a rural demographic? I mean, with Zambezi News, definitely our key target demographic is your urban and peri-urban young people aged 16 to 35, and those are the people who are on mobile phones and are sharing information. But yeah, definitely to get to those in more rural areas, that's when the key thing of such as DVDs comes into play. It's distributing those thousands of DVDs out into rural areas, but also through sharing on platforms like WhatsApp. I mean, it's such a big platform in Zimbabwe that you'll have people on WhatsApp in villages and growth points. So I think that's key. But at the same time, in terms of turning online, the online into offline, I think is so important, because ultimately, with Zambezi News, it's about provoking, conversation. It's about making people laugh and think at the same time. But the key thing is that the satire that I do, that Siyanda does, that Gado does, it's not a replacement for political activism. It has to be. It's the message, it's the communication, it's the inspiration for people to take action and get out into the streets. And I think that's the key thing, just as you're saying, be it with the Arab Spring and how it was started online. Definitely, Facebook was a tool to communicate and mobilize, but ultimately, you had to then get out onto the streets to affect that change. So I think we have to seeing satire as a mobilizing tool, but not, it's a means, but not the ends.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I mean, the recent statistics about, for example, mobile phones in Kenya, you have over 20 million smartphones in users in Kenya. And I think double that number in terms of mobile phone users. So, I mean, there is actually optimism in terms of, distribution of satire and other media content through these platforms. And I think one also has to look at that because those numbers are still growing in many parts of Africa.
Quite rapidly, too.
Would you like to add to?
Yeah, I mean, no.
So the official statistics.
Can I add something just based on what Gado was saying? Yeah. I think that's the really interesting thing is I don't think people understand how much the mobile phone is, the mobile phone and access to mobile broadband internet is a revolution in Africa. And the fact that, in Zimbabwe, there's that statistic that, there are more mobile phones than people. And it's, in a lot of ways, if it's managed correctly, you've got the African continent going through a new information age, and the mobile phone is what's driving that. You look at the fact that in Zimbabwe now you've got the growth so much of sharing video and on Facebook that you've got so many different young independent producers that are shooting, clever comedy shows, satirical shows that are driving home social messages, political messages. They're shooting this by themselves, uploading it online, and getting tens and tens of thousands of viewers. Based on that, they end up getting, corporate sponsorship or they get funding. But this is a new generation of young Zimbabweans, of young Africans who can create their own content, share it, and don't have to go through any censorship whatsoever of trying to get it onto state-controlled TV or government-aligned television stations. So it's a very interesting context to be in. The problem is that we have that access to Facebook and WhatsApp because there's zero rating. And so in Zimbabwe, you buy Facebook bundles, you buy WhatsApp bundles, and there's one cell phone network that zero rates Twitter. So that means you can access Facebook for $4 a month, as much as you like. Problem being, is then that, of course, you've got these big social media corporations that everyone has access to, but what about the little blogs that are starting up? What about the alternative voices online that aren't zero rated? So I think that's also, we've got to, balance this conversation out in terms of, yes, increasing access for young people to internet in Africa, but not just to the your large corporations, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Yeah. And then there's I think, because we had this discussion yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think there's also the kind of necessity of teaching kind of web literacy. So most people in Botswana everywhere can use Facebook, right? But I don't know if a lot of people can, for example, figure out how to learn a recipe online, or how to learn how to code, or how to use the internet for its vast potential. In the past 5 years, even my maths degree, every skill that I've acquired started with a Google search and trying to figure out how to use whatever time I had to teach myself something. I cannot say that with confidence for someone like my little brother, for example, who may know how to use Facebook and may know how to use whatever, but I'm not entirely confident that many young people or many of the people who are exposed to the internet via Facebook have the web literacy to utilize the internet to its fullest potential.
Mm. Let's go. I think I would just ask a last question, and then we have 15 minutes for Q&A from the audience, because I don't want to deprive you of the possibility to ask questions. Just let's go back to satire. Now through the social media, everybody can be a comedian, right? As you said, everybody can post satirical, whatever, videos, pictures, and so on. People do. People in South Africa definitely do, where I'm based, and people in your countries do as well. At the same time, there's still a quest for people like you, Gado, for some basic news, for people who kind of do the start and throw it out and kind of give some guidance or kind of guide on the political critique. So how does that go together? How do you interact with your audiences? How do you interact with commentaries, with people who want to contribute as well?
I think for us, for example, with the XYZ show, again, if I go back to the social media, we have, the media in Africa is also growing. One of the things that we have used very effectively is actually the interaction with our audience. What we are getting, for example, from 3 years ago, you have actually an audience that actually will demand for a particular content. An audience that will say, oh, there is a particular issue you haven't touched on. And that has been quite interesting that, we started with the audience that probably we want your feedback and to see what's going on. But now we have an audience that is demanding, particular kind of content. An audience that is actually look at satire and say, oh, you are talking about this, but there is a different issue that you're not talking about. So that has also been very interesting in terms of actually tracking what we are doing as satirists, but also getting the feedback and actually getting to know what the audience is looking out there. I have always, of course, with the growth of internet, there is always a talk that everybody can be a comedian, and we have all sorts of stuff out there. How do we regulate it? I've always said that the evils of free speech and free expression are far much less as compared to the evils of clamping down on that free speech. So whereas, yes, we are going to have issues now and then because of that, the environment that is growing, I think it's important to note and to insist that, especially in Africa, that is not, should not be compromised. The fact that there are all these problems and issues, the free speech and freedom of press should not be compromised, as many people have tried to argue, especially on the side of the repressive governments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of also, getting feedback, I think that's where also social media plays, an important role. And I think for us, it's about taking on board that feedback and changing the content, etc., accordingly. You know, I know after the first season there was, you know, feedback and 1 or 2 blogs saying, okay, there's not enough women representation, and we're like, damn, actually that's true. Let's, you know, let's make sure we've got some main female characters. You get critiques about certain characters, and you're like, okay, we'll kill off those characters. People don't like them. Well, literally, we had to get this one character who wasn't very popular. We actually got him lynched in the season that we are yet to release. He was played by me. It's fine. I got lynched. Yeah. But also in terms of getting feedback, sometimes you get really interesting feedback. Like when we got, you know, sent DVDs out to the rural areas, we got a lot of really good feedback from people, but there was one person who fed back who was saying, I can't believe that this is the state of our national broadcaster. I can't believe that the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation is this bad. And we were like, oh, that's amazing. You think we're actually the national broadcaster? Well, that's our job done. We can retire now, you know?
Actually, that's one thing I've always been really interested in when it comes to satire, specifically in Africa, is that no matter where you do it, you might have this issue, I don't know if you do, but where people don't necessarily get that it's satire quite immediately. I mean, I'm not saying like mistaking it for news always to that level, but there was this very popular writer, Loose Cannon in Botswana, who was like the first satirist I ever saw. And he once wrote this open letter to Mugabe about XYZ. I don't remember the details, but people were up in arms. People writing him letters like, oh, how dare you talk about your friend like that? And they really, not a lot of people immediately, and I think it's a global problem also with Stephen Colbert. He also went through that, where people don't get the thing.
Yeah.
Do you guys experience that?
Yeah. It's very true.
Yeah. Not everybody has a sense of humor. But I'm afraid we have only 10 minutes left, and I would really like to open up to the audience. Is there anyone who has a question, a comment?
Apart from the Zambezi News guys down there, you're not allowed to ask questions. We're censoring you.
Yes, so much.
Temporarily taking away your freedom of expression. You're welcome to throw bottles, though.
Or shoes.
Or shoes.
Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mark Jordan. I'm from Ghana. My question goes to all of you guys. There's been a frequent, it's actually coming up now, where African leaders are clamping down on cartoonists who are making mockery of them and stuff like that. Are we going to get to a point where you guys must start seeking asylum in some countries because you're making fun of African governments?
That's basically what I'm doing here in Berlin. I'm just feeling out the ground. I'm going to see if it's possible to seek asylum in Kreuzberg. I really like that area, and I just feel
You're coming at a very bad time.
Yeah. You guys got a response to that?
Oh, okay. Yes, I agree with you. We have seen trends where there has been clamping down of the satire journalists, political commentators, and cartoonists. And that's actually a dangerous trend. I hope, it won't get worse. There are two things happening also alongside what is happening. You have lots of African governments where in the 90s, let's say, under a lot of pressure from donors and foreign governments about democracy, freedom of press, and so forth. And that allowed a little bit of an opening. What is worrying me at the moment is the trend whereby I see that development is a substitute for clamping down on the gains that have been achieved. So you have China, which is pretty much a big player in Africa, does not demand anything from African governments, and that's a good thing. It's an alternative to trade, with African countries. You have countries like United States and Western countries who are willing to look away, to look the other way as far as press freedom and governance issues are concerned. And it's a situation where it leaves African governments with free reign in terms of doing whatever they want with freedom of press. So it's a worrying trend, if I may say so. But I'm optimistic that in countries like Kenya, probably it will fail, and in many other African countries because of the various reasons that we have discussed today.
I think also another thing to consider is the idea of culture, because African governments, as much as we like to claim that all of them are unequivocally, indisputably tyrannical, they do not operate in a vacuum. So there must be a number of people in that country, even if they're not the majority, who have this idea that it is culturally appropriate to clamp down on press freedom if it's represented in certain ways. So you see the way that they do it is they don't say, oh, you people are too free. They usually figure out how to make it like a cultural issue. It becomes an anti-African problem. So for example, you had Zapiro in South Africa who painted this, was it a painting? This comic, was it a painting? A painting of Jacob Zuma with his presidential business out, right? And it was, chaos, but it was chaos from the South Africans. It wasn't the government saying, oh, this is wrong. It was South Africans saying, oh, this is un-African. It's like an attack on our culture. It's an attack on, our dignity and all of these things. So they end up supporting anti-press freedom movements in that way. So it's not as if, So if we can figure out how to remove this idea that culture is unequivocally tied to this fixed idea of decency, then I think that's one big step in preventing things like press freedom from being compromised.
I think it wasn't Zapiro, sorry, it was an artist actually. But Zapiro has also painted Zuma with all
Zapiro's out of
control.
Now I was going to say, just in terms of government excuses for clamping down on social media, we had our President Mugabe come back recently, and he made a statement about how great the Chinese firewall was in terms of restricting the internet in China and how we need to build one in Zimbabwe. But I mean, we're so inefficient in Zimbabwe; it'd be more of a rickety fence, the Great Zimbabwean rickety fence. But now you've got ministers talking like our Minister of Information and Communication Technology, who also owns a radio station or two, but they're very independent. Not so much. He's been talking about the need to regulate social media, not to ban, because in Zimbabwe we don't ban things, we just regulate them. We regulate the shit out of them. And his reason, he's very obviously very very active and pro-women, because his reason to regulate the social media is because he wants to stop revenge porn. That's what he said. He said we want to get involved in regulating social media to stop revenge porn. But of course, with our government, that'll just be a means to them being able to restrict free expression online.
There are two more questions here. Three.
My name is Chambi. I just have a question about representation of women in satire. I tend to believe that satire is supposed to be emancipating. So I'm really interested in knowing how far this license that our satirists have go in terms of representing women. Because sometimes I look at the cartoons and they are really demeaning to women. So does it mean because you are satirists, we're just free to just represent anything, anyhow?
That's a good question.
No, that was... No, that's a very good question. I think I learned pretty much earlier on in my career that to learn about women representation, and I've been I'm very much aware of that. But that does not mean that I, as a satirist, I avoid satirizing women. Women are part and parcel of the society, and I do disrespect women leaders the same way I disrespect male leaders, as in a satire form. It's always a fine line, and sometimes it's challenging. In terms of today in Africa, in East Africa, we have actually quite a number of female satirists, female cartoonists. We have not so many female cartoonists, but actually quite a number of satirical writers. I mean, our show XYZ has 5 writers, and 2, including our head writer, is a woman. So we are very much aware of that. In East Africa, we have the famous Antum Sime, who's the female comedian, very well known in East Africa and in Africa in general. We have probably about 3 other well-known comedians, female comedians in Kenya. And that tells a lot about the representation of women in East Africa and Africa in general.
Yeah, I think it's a very important question in terms of representation in satire, because I think, satire needs to be a weapon of the oppressed and focus on the oppressors. And so questions of representation are very important. I mean, that's why, while what happened with the Charlie Hebdo cartoonist is unforgivable, an issue that I have, and I know other satirists have with that form of satire, is that there's no point attacking your marginalized Muslim communities in France through satire, because they're already marginalized, they're already powerless. So I think also in terms of satire, we need to, of course, it's attacking, if it's the politicians and the heads of corporations and those that are doing wrong. But also when we're trying to represent certain voices, if it's about representing women, if it's representing LGBTI people, then they need to be included in the process. And that's, I think, like you were saying, the same with us in terms of we've got 4 main writers for Zambezi News, 2 are women, 2 are men. But that question does get asked, like when we were doing a talk the other day, talking about how we represent women's issues and LGBTI issues, the moderator said, well, did you have any gay people involved in writing about homophobia in the show? And we're like, actually, no, we didn't. But that's something that we have to consider, because otherwise you're not really being the voice of the voiceless. You end up silencing those voices by not taking them on board.
Well, thanks for that. I think your last words open up for a whole new session about the role of satire and racism and sexism within satire. Luckily, we have another session on Wednesday. I'm sorry that I have to cut it off. There was one more question, but we've reached the end of our time. But luckily, on Wednesday at the Heinrich Böll Foundation, we have another session with our guests tonight for 2 hours, and we're going to talk about satire in Africa in depth. So if you're interested, please come and please check out Zambezi News on YouTube, check out Gado's work, Siyanda Wright's blog. It's really worth it. Thank you so much.